Alright, so next we've got my soundtrack recommendations for March, and I listened to a fair amount this month, and these are divided into two tiers. Maybe I could label it a little bit better, but the top row, bordered by the stars, are all the ones that I enjoyed and would recommend, like looking back at what I saved, like songs that I saved to my playlist for listening to just general soundtracks and ones that I like. I These were ones that I actually saved multiple songs from, and then the other ones are ones that I listened to. They weren't bad, but they aren't ones that I saved anything to, and they didn't like stand out. So we have Creed 2 and Creed 3. Those are both really good. They're done by different composers actually, so they're maybe a little bit different. But I think Ludwig Göransson is a great composer. He did Creed 2. I forget who did Creed 3 at this point, but it's kind of nice. I mean, I think sometimes to switch up the composer between films and a franchise just to give it a little bit of freshness. But yeah, those are both ones I'd recommend. Empire of Light, I love that soundtrack. I think it has a very similar feel to what those artists have done. I think they did like Soul and The Social Network. But I love their style of music. It reminds me a little bit of Thomas Newman, just for it being kind of more like a calming and I don't know. It just feels like easy breathing sort of music, I guess. But that one I liked a lot. 80 for Brady, I was not expecting to actually like that soundtrack. I was surprised to see it was available on Spotify, but it's done by John Debney, and I actually saved quite a few. It's just a pleasant sounding soundtrack. So the Menu as well, I think there's a few songs that kind of stood out there. And then The Fablemans I thought was really good. John Williams he's one of the best composers out there. Not necessarily my favorite, but he's definitely up there, and I think he's arguably the greatest composer. He's even though he's not my personal favorite, but I really liked what he did with the Fablemans, making it very much centered on the piano and kind of more of a classical piano tunes sort of a feel. So that was nice to see. And then these other ones, The Quiet Girl, Enola Holmes 2, Avatar, The Way of Water, Scream 6, and All Quiet on the Western Front, I listened to, but I don't think I saved any songs. So nothing really stood out to me there. So if you're looking for new soundtracks, I recommend the top row of these, and then the bottom row I can't personally recommend. I spent like it blows my mind how All Quiet on the Western Front won Best Original Score. It had like one theme that it did, and that theme is like 5 notes long, I think. I don't know, or maybe it's just a couple. It's like maybe two or three. It's overly simple, and I'm amazed that it got nominated for Best Original Score and then that it won. I like the Fablemans definitely should have won over it, and I think there's other things that should have been nominated over it. But yeah, that like I would have picked any soundtrack that was nominated over it. Again, no offense, like no offense to the composer. I think it does fit the film. But like, oh, that was the one. The Batman is probably my favorite soundtrack from last year. And I acknowledge that there's a difference between what's my favorite and kind of what's objectively the best. But Michael Giacchino, aside from it being my favorite, he knocked it out of the park with that film. Like, he came up with several different themes, and I don't know, it just, for that one to not get nominated and then to have, like, All Quiet on the Western Front win, that was a little hard to see, and that's not how I would have voted, but hey, it's I'm sure a lot better than what I would do for composing music. But yeah, not to take away from the composer. It's still a soundtrack. I still enjoyed listening to it. It just didn't stand out to me. So anyway, that does it for my soundtrack recommendations. If you listen to any new soundtracks this last month and care to share them or recommend them, I'd love to hear it down in the comments below.